So today we're going to start chapter 3 in Women Who Run with the Wolves. And if you haven't seen my other videos about the book, I'm looking at it through the lens of narcissism. If you've specifically been on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse. So this book is very relevant for that situation. And what we're doing is we're just taking each chapter one at a time, and we're looking at it, just the highlighted points of it, and we're just dissecting those important points through that lens, just to gain a deeper understanding of what we went through and trying to refine our discernment after coming out of it, and just trying to be more wise, and to ensure that we don't fall into those same pitfalls again. So that's the goal. And so the title of chapter 3, and this is what I did with chapter 2 is I split it into 2 videos. So the first part of chapter 2, that video I did was just a really gentle introduction, so that we could take our time and each video wouldn't be so long. And so I thought splitting, especially some of these chapters, and it's been about 20 years since I've read this book, and so I've read it a couple of times actually. This is the 3rd time, and I'm just literally going through and reading each chapter right before I do the videos with you. So and I make notes so that it's all fresh on my mind with you guys. And I can't remember, honestly, if every chapter is going to be this rich. The whole book in general is very rich, I'll say that. But it just worked out good, I think, to split chapter 2 into 2 videos. And I've already seen that we're going to need to do that with chapter 3. It's extremely rich. There's only one story in chapter 3, but it's a long story with a lot of different elements and talking points. So we're definitely going to at least have 2 videos for chapter 3. So the title of chapter 3 is called Nosing Out the Facts. And remember, everything's in reference to wolves because that's the title of the book, So you'll hear her making reference to animal behaviors like that. So chapter 3 is Nosing Out the Facts, the retrieval of intuition as initiation. And already, the title of this is just, it resonates for me at least, because it says the retrieval of intuition. And then there's hope there, as she says, as initiation. Because you know that once you've been through a narcissistic relationship, you're forever changed. And it's tough, but yet you come out much wiser. You're changed for the better, is my point. Even though it may not feel like it when you're going through it, and especially like right when you come out of it, it's tough stuff. It's real tough stuff, and I don't have to even tell you that if you've been through it. But I love the fact that she says the retrieval of intuition as initiation. So it's almost like the fact that she mentions intuition as being something that we have to retrieve. It's like we let it go. But I don't really know that I would say that. How many times have you reflected back on these experiences you've been through and you're thinking, I just ignored my gut, And it's easy just to say that, just to kind of sum it up, just to simplify things. I think that a lot of times we oversimplify things in our mind, and I think the majority of the time that's it's not effective, it's not risky, but I think sometimes it is risky to oversimplify things. And I think it's just human nature to do it, but I think that it can actually have a big change, a big impact in our life to do that. And so patience is just crucial when your life's been shaken up in particular, and you're trying to get back in balance. That's how I see this. It's like, I think we're all born with intuition, and I want to tell you a little something about that in a minute, about something I read, breaking down what intuition really is. We'll talk about that, but I feel like we're all born with it, and I feel like what happens is, as we grow and mature, as a young adult, I think we question it. I think it's still there. I don't think that we totally abandon it per se. I think that it's just we're trying, as we're learning in life through experience in school and, in our culture and our family and society, as we learn, we start to think that we're smarter than that intuition. It's like we're subconsciously, we get this attitude like, I got this figured out. So when you have this little voice, that's always been there that used to guide you as a child or whatnot, it's like you're overriding that. You're arguing with that. And that's how I view it. Not that you're abandoning it, but you're covering it up with these layers of what you think is wisdom and logic. So that's important for me to say that, because what I had read about intuition the other day, and I wish I had saved it, but I like to read a lot, and so I can't save it all. But what I had read the other day was basically saying what intuition is a higher level of wisdom and logic, because it's almost like all these things in life you experience and you learn, they're not readily available in the forefront of your mind, in the functioning part of your awakened consciousness, because that's kind of like for the present moment processing to operate in the world. But it's like everything that you experience and learn is stored somewhere in there, but it's just kind of filed back in there, like in the subconscious or even unconscious. I don't know, I'm not a scholar in this area. It's just very interesting to me. And so I think that's when you get these themes to pop up in your dreams. It's like these certain things are trying to bring this message forward. Maybe there's, I'm sure you've probably experienced this, I have, where you're going through a certain experience in your life and you're trying to figure it out, or maybe it's just a tough situation, and you start to have dreams that are similar, and they're, it's like a pattern, and they're repetitive, and you're just waking up every morning going like, what kind of message am I supposed to get from that? It's such a bizarre dream, because there's so much symbolism in your dreams a lot. And it's the point that this person was making with your intuition is that, everything is stored. Everything you've experienced, everything you've learned is in there somewhere. And that's where your intuition, your gut feeling comes from. It truly is a higher level of wisdom and logic, because it's not just pulling from these few little points that you're noticing in your present moment awareness. Something you just read last week that's fresh on your mind, so you're using that and that only, thinking you're being smart to make a life-changing decision. It's more than that. It's pulling from everything, but your conscious mind is not able to grasp that, because all of these things you've experienced and learned can't just flood your conscious present moment awareness. It's just the way our mind works. Does that make sense? So instead, the way we get those messages from our intuition, from our gut, is a lot of times we feel it in our bodies. Or I think that's why they call it the gut check, because you feel it in your gut, in your core, like in your solar plexus, or your abdomen, or butterflies, or just what you might call this inner knowing, feeling led, this pull inside of you, like you just know what you know, but you don't know why you know it. And so it's strong. It's a strong feeling, but it's a feeling. It is a feeling. And that's where you also have to be careful, because emotions, I think, can sometimes mimic your intuition, because you feel those too, but they're passing. That's the difference, I think. And I'm a little bit processing with you all right now. I think that's the difference. Emotions come and go. Intuition is deeper. Intuition is more consistent. And even if your thoughts fluctuate, even if your feelings fluctuate, if there's this baseline, like gut knowing, then I think we should listen to that, because I think it's based and founded on real experience and real wisdom. It's just that there's so much, like that person said, that it's just not the way our brain works, that it can all stay all the time in the forefront of our mind for us to grasp. Does that make sense? So, and then of course, if you're a spiritual person, I do think that there's a spiritual element to this, and that would be a whole nother conversation, because I think that to really want to make the right decision with something and to be careful, I think that when we pray and we ask for guidance, if that is in your practice in life, then I think that's like putting that request in for this intuition to go to work. And then I believe in, you know, other things as well out here that line up, you know, that I truly believe there's a higher power at work with all that. And so when you experience all of it, you know, that gut check and then all this too, it's hard to deny. But when we're young, you know, we get cocky sometimes. We get a little bit full of ourselves. We think we know what's what, and we don't. We're so inexperienced and naive still, and we don't even know. It's like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. So that's just some opening thoughts I have on intuition. It's such a rich topic in itself, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this chapter with y'all. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments section too, if you feel called to share. So today, besides that little opening bit, I thought I would share just some of the main points, kind of so that we can start thinking and getting our minds prepared to really absorb the chapter, the story, all the elements. So it's kind of like we're already, you know, started down that path, you know, conceptually. So hopefully we'll be able to grasp things a little bit better. That's how I like to do it anyway. I want to open up chapter 3 with just reading a little bit to you here and there. I'm going to tell you where it is. So the story in chapter 3 is called Vasilisa the Wise. It's the doll in her pocket, Vasilisa the Wise. That's the story that we're going to be learning from, and that these notes are going to be related to and about. So I'm going to read you the opening paragraph here, okay, to chapter 3. Intuition is the treasure of a woman's psyche. It is like a divining instrument and like a crystal through which one can see with uncanny interior vision. It is like a wise old woman who is with you always, who tells you exactly what the matter is, tells you exactly whether you need to go left or right. It is a form of the one who knows. Old Lake Sabe, I hope I'm saying that right, the wild woman. Okay, so, yes, I love how she's so poetic in her descriptions of things. It's almost like, and I have so much respect for people who can get a message across veiled in a story. To me, that's some higher wisdom right there. I've always been more of a straightforward person, bullet point, you know, as far as receiving information and giving it. And so to try and and wrap something up in a parable, or even to decipher it that way, it's been a challenge for me. I can do it, but it's just a little bit challenging for me, and I just have so much respect for storytellers, and she's a great storyteller. So then a little ways down it says, the old Russian tale, Vasilisa, is a woman's initiation story with few essential bones astray. It is about the realization that most things are not as they seem. As women, we call upon our intuition and instincts in order to sniff things out. We use all our senses to wring the truth from things, to extract nourishment from ideas, to see what there is to see, know what there is to know, to be the keepers of the creative fire, and to have intimate knowing about the life, death, life cycles of all nature. This is an initiation. This is an initiated woman. So, to me, that just screams maturity and experience, you know. And I love how, you know, it's not a life-death cycle. It's a life-death-life cycle. So keep that in mind and take that to heart. You know, it does feel like your life comes to a halt when you get entangled with a narcissist, but there is life beyond it. You know, we do have to have a period of time to comprehend and absorb and get back in balance and heal. We have to have that time, but it's just I keep reiterating this, and it's really true. It's my deepest hope that we can all push through beyond that when the time is right, and experience, you know, more blessings in life, you know, to experience more life and not be stuck in that death part of the cycle. Because if we're stuck there forever, then they win, you know, and I'm not going to let them win. So there's that. Okay, so, all right, so she goes into the story after that, and it's several pages long, this story, and we're just going to hit the highlights next time on this story, okay? But for now, I want to go past that, and what she does is she breaks down the story via tasks like, you know, what are we supposed to learn and then take action on? Like, what happens, you know, from the lessons in this story in our lives? Like, how is this applicable? And that's what she does. She breaks it down in tasks. So I'm going to read through these tasks, and that I'm hoping that will kind of prepare us to be able to absorb the story better, because we kind of know what to look out for and what things, you know, we have an idea of what things mean as far as symbolism. Because I think sometimes if you go into a story blindly and you don't know anything about symbolism, it's like and then you learn what it's supposed to mean afterward, then you have to go back anyways and read it again. So I'm going to read to you the tasks. So the first task is called allowing the too good mother to die. And I know that we're not going to totally understand this until we read the story. I just want to put that out there. But again, it's just prepping our minds. So it says, the psychic tasks of this stage in a woman's life are these: accepting that the ever-watchful, hovering, protective psychic mother is not adequate as a central guide for one's future instinctual life. So in parentheses, the too good mother dies. Taking on the task of being on one's own, developing one's own consciousness about danger, intrigue, politic, becoming alert by oneself, for oneself, letting die what must die. As the too good mother dies, the new woman is born. And so that's, you know, a little summary of the transformation that takes place as we grow and mature in our intuition and in our psyche through experiences like, you know, narcissistic abuse. And then I highlighted this little paragraph. Vasilisa's initiation begins with learning to let die what must die. This means to let die the values and attitudes within the psyche which no longer sustain her. Especially to be examined are those long-held tenets which make life too safe, which overprotect, which make women walk with a scurry instead of a stride. I love this. It's beautiful. It's talking about pacing yourself. It's talking about, you know, careful risk taking, you know, not just being stuck in being scared going forward and in fear, you know, letting old values and attitudes die, which may have developed from the narcissistic abuse, where we don't trust ourselves, where we're disconnected from you know, this inner knowing and inner understanding and inner guiding light. It's you know, we can actually develop if you're with someone a long time and they're not good for you, you can actually wind up developing conditioning in your own mind the way you would like in an abusive childhood. I mean, if you're with somebody long enough and they affect you on a very deep and personal level, it can rewire your brain. And then you can wind up with very unhealthy coping mechanisms, addictions. It just changes who you are. And those are the things that I feel like we need to let die. And it's risky because it's familiar. Once you've lived a certain way, even if it's not good for you for a long time, it's familiar, even if it might be bad for you. And so I feel like that's really what she's referring to there, that, sometimes if we're getting real with ourselves, we have to admit, if we want there to be a life part at the end of that cycle, beyond death, we have to admit, gotta let some things go sometimes to really, truly finish that healing and that growth process. So, the second task is called exposing the crude shadow. The tasks of this time are learning even more mindfully to let go of the overly positive mother, finding that being good, being sweet, being nice will not cause life to sing. In other words, if you're compliant to a controlling person, it's not going to impact them. They're still going to be controlling. It's, whatever you're able to give as a loving, honest person, it's never going to be enough for these people. And you have to let that go. Trying to please others and being others focused is how I see that. It's okay, and then right here after that in parentheses it says Vasilisa becomes a slave, but it does not help. So there you go, just reiterating that point. Experiencing directly, and this is interesting, one's own shadow nature, particularly the exclusionary, jealous, and exploitative aspects of self. And that's represented in the story by the stepmother and stepsister. So we'll have to read and figure out what she means there, because a lot of times these characters are, in her stories, representative of aspects of our psyche. But then we can, also externalize it and apply it to people in our lives too. It says, owning these, making the best relationship one can with the worst parts of oneself, letting the pressure build between who one is taught to be and who one really is. That could be related to the conditioning again. Ultimately, working toward letting the old self die and the new intuitive self be born. Okay, so here's what I'm getting out of this so far. And that is when it says getting in touch with one's own shadow nature, particularly the exclusionary, I'm seeing this as when you're a kind, loving person and you get taken advantage of by a narcissist, it's like you don't even feel empowered within yourself to stand up to them sometimes, because they're going to use all kind of tools against you, like shame, any kind of anything you might be self-conscious about, from your childhood or whatever. Maybe people joked about in your family or whatever. They're going to look for any possible weaknesses to exploit that and shame you and keep you, like down here suppressed, with your self-confidence. They're going to try and keep that suppressed to keep you under control. And I think that what she's talking about here, when you're coming into and accepting one's own shadow nature, particularly the exclusionary, I think it means like you are willing to look at your true power, which by society may be deemed as not nice, brash, harsh, for you to speak back and speak up to these people. But that's what you have to do. You have to put your foot down. You can't just keep being nice and letting people treat you like a doormat. At some point you have to use that spine that you got, and you got to stand up for yourself. And so it calls you into your power. It calls you to that. So ultimately it's kind of a beautiful process, even though it sucks, And then it says, making the best relationship one can with the worst parts of oneself. And letting the pressure build between who one is taught to be and who one really is. That's what I'm talking about, the conditioning. I mean, this person's going to have probably taught you, conditioned you to be a certain way. You know, like, oh, you're so sweet. They're going to reward you for that, for being, you know, submissive to their control and tolerant of their abuse and stuff like that. And you have to be willing to confront that. I mean, it's not like you have to become this beast and yell and scream. I mean, some might do that, you know, if you just tolerate. Like that, I think there's that movie with Jim Carrey, is it Me, Myself, and Irene, where he flips one day? I think that's the right movie, where his wife, I laugh because it's a comedy, but it's a terrible situation. His wife just, you know, treated him horribly, and he just tolerated until he snapped one day. So we don't want to do that, but it's just about coming into your power, owning it, and finally accepting, you know, what you need to do, because you deserve better. You know, I don't think anybody should just stay in a situation where they're being abused and taken advantage of and used. It says, Vasilisa is disenfranchised, for she inherits and is inherited by a family that cannot understand or appreciate her. As far as they're concerned, she is unnecessary. They hate and revile her. They treat her as the stranger, the untrustworthy one. In fairy tales, the role of the stranger or the outcast is usually played by the one who is most deeply connected to the knowing nature. In other words, if you're the person in your family who sees how corrupt everybody else is, and you're not that way because you're aligning yourself with truth and your gut, then yeah, of course you're gonna be the outcast because you're not going along with things. So it's about developing that inner strength and not letting go of that connection you have to truth and that inner guiding light. The third task is called navigating in the dark. It says, these are the psychic tasks of this time: consenting to venture into the locus of deep initiation, entering the forest, and beginning to experience the new and dangerous feeling Newman of being in one's intuitive power, learning to develop sensitivity as regards direction to the mysterious and conscious, and relying solely on one's inner senses, learning the way back home to the wild mother. In the story, it means heeding the doll's directions, learning to feed intuition, or feeding the doll in the story. We'll find out. Letting the frail, know-nothing maiden die even more, shifting power to the doll or the intuition. So, again, it's just really about coming into your power, and your power is your intuition, and just truly trusting that. And I thought that was kind of neat the way she explained it. The fourth task is facing the wild hag. The tasks of this meeting are these: being able to stand the face of the fearsome wild goddess without wavering. Sometimes the most beautiful and transformative experiences in our life, or relationships in our life, are the scariest. That's how I feel. And it's easy to run, but if you're able to stand without wavering, then what? You know? It says meeting up with the Baba Yaga, which we'll learn about Baba Yaga. Familiarizing oneself with the arcane, the odd, the otherness of the wild. It says residing at Baba Yaga's house for a while, taking some of her values into our lives, thereby becoming ourselves a little odd. Because, you know, if you think about the society at large, how many people really are truthful people who aren't liars at all, who try at least to live a virtuous life with integrity. You know, we can't always know a lot of people's heart, like truly know their heart, but those that we let into our inner circle, you know, we can certainly do our best to try and know. But it's when you just step back and you look at society at whole, it's like you may find yourself sometimes feeling a little bit like an oddball when you're not going along with things that are not, you know, virtuous. A way of life that's maybe traditional, or has a certain set of values, and you don't feel like you see a lot of other people out there that have that or live that way. It can make you feel out of place sometimes. So you got to be able to be strong enough, to go against the grain sometimes, if the grain is corrupt. It says, learning to face great power in others and subsequently one's own power. Letting the frail and too sweet child die back even further. In other words, not going along with, like, if everybody's going to jump off the cliff, the old, saying you hear, are you just going to follow them off the cliff? It's kind of like being willing to stand up and, like I said, go against the grain and not do what everybody else is doing. If you know in your heart of hearts it's wrong. And that, you got to be strong. And that, to me, is an example of true strength. Staying aligned with that intuition inside. So, all right, we're already at 30 minutes, and I really didn't want to have these be much longer than that. So there's still many more tasks, but let's stop there with the 4th task. We'll pick up the 5th task in the next video. And I hope this at least gets you kind of thinking about intuition and what it means to live aligned with your intuition, and how it feels like you get disconnected, or you pile layers of logic or reasoning with yourself on top of it, and you wind up really fooling yourself into thinking it's the right thing to do to stay with somebody who's not good for you. It's just coming back, being strong enough to rip those layers off and get back down to that God-given instinct that we all have. I hope this kind of gives you some things to think about, and I hope that it was very inspirational for you as well. So thanks so much for going along this path with me, and if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up, and I'd love it if you want to subscribe, and you can always hit the bell to be notified when I post another video. I try to post at least 2 or 3 videos a week for now, and again, I just really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a really great Thanksgiving, by the way. Bye.